Three. Okay. Hey, Steve Morris. Thanks for appreciating them. Uh, Sorry, I'm not saying much during this one. I'm just doing some sketching here, trying to figure out some samples of some demonstrations to show people the different kinds of work you can have and why some sketches might be better than others. This is mostly from a industrial design standpoint. I should make a note of that. Oh, there's sound, Corey. I'm just not talking too much. Uh, there is sound, just not talking too much. But I can, if there is something to say. And I'm also clearly talking and typing at the same time, or not at the same time. So, yeah, I just kind of don't know what to say right now. I'm just sort of going through these sketches. But once people like yourself come into the chat here and ask some questions, then I can start saying a few things based upon whatever it is you have a question about. But I got some time right now to be doing some sketching here. It's actually sort of thinking through some demos I want to give for some of the classes I teach. And I thought I would just do them here in the uh, online while streaming and to see what comes up. So the goal here is to show different levels of sketching and also explain why I think some of them are better than others so that I can have samples for students to see. And one of the things that I get by live streaming right now is possible feedback from people like yourselves to see if these things make sense, and also just interesting questions that people may have as I do it. So just adding some thicker line. Oh, nope, that's in the right spot. Thicker line weight to this. And let's put a 5 here. Oh, and let's put some little details of like some material thickness right there, and there, and there. All right. So now, right, talking about each of these and why I think they are at their different levels. Maybe I might end up changing the actual labels for like bad, okay, good, and great. The actual name is not as important as that we have these different levels that we're going for. And I don't think that's straight, unfortunately, either. Take this one down. I gotta watch that. So this first one, very much like the one above it. Right, there is, oops, too big. That's the right one. Draw through on this. Right. Scratchy lines. Proportion? Question mark? It's the right scale for a mouse. Now this next one, that's okay. It does have, again, still has draw through construction in there. It does have product details. And there are two things for that, I think. It has buttons, material, not material. Let's say part lines, right? The different spaces between different parts. And say smooth lines, right? So this next one is good because there is draw through. There's draw through. I think there is form application, which is to help the draw through. There are lines. We'll say consistent perspective. And this great one has everything that came before. It has the draw through. It has smooth lines. Distant perspective. It has part lines, so say product details. Mm. What else can we do here? Go through that same process again, but for a different product. Something really simple. A shoe, iron. A camera. Let's go for a camera. And for the camera, I'll actually just try and match some of the stuff for the that I did with the mouse up there. So no draw through, scratchy lines. Is the proportion correct? Actually, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it. Did you, Steve? Did you say to do a camera, or did I pick a camera at the same time that you said to do a camera? I'm not sure. Oh, so this one should still be with a pen. So we can do a slightly better job here. I think the goal here is smooth lines, but no draw through. Let's have the perspective be a little bit off with this one, though. And we'll put a few more details on this. Now we can do the, oh no, I did those on just that one there. Let's grab that, move that off that layer. And paste. Move it to there. Okay, so we go back to the marker, pen, and marker layer. Okay, so now with the draw through here, and I guess the thing that shows up here when I do this that I have not made a note of is that when I do a draw through and perspective, I am rotating the page a lot more to help myself out with that. And that was not showing up in the other sketches because I wasn't rotating the page. I wasn't doing better at sketching my perspective there. So that was kind of the point of those ones. That they were done incorrectly, or the method with which they were done allowed for more mistakes to happen that could be avoided with a little bit more work. It takes a little bit more time, but it is entirely worth it for the better sketch that comes out. Okay, so now we start with orthographic sketching and deconstructing an object orthographically. When you say deconstructing an object orthographically, I assume you mean like a side view or something like that. So if you, when you enter that, and I finish this page right here, I could actually, well, I will start a new page and can not just talk about it, but also show you what that is. So I again would say deconstructing object orthographically. Are you referring to like looking at side views and top views? Are you also referring to trying to put them together in the side view and top view? So those are a few of the follow-up questions I have to you. Oh, so yes, side view, top view. All right. Let me can finish this right here. Actually, I'll just finish this one right here. I can always come back to it, but while it's fresh in my head, that was a mistake from the tool. We can open up a new page and talk about deconstructing something orthographically. So, with this one, well, I'll come back and add more details to it. But again, we can start to see the difference between all these sketches and how much. And even though this one doesn't have as much details, I think this is a better sketch than ones that do have more details because we have correct perspective and things like that. But let's go look at something and how we deconstruct it orthographically. Keyboard, orthographic deconstruction. Um, so you could absolutely, get a side view of an object like a photo or something when drawing an object. I will actually, I'll do a camera. I do have a camera right in front of me. I'll be using that as reference. Deconstruction. And, on top of having the camera in front of me, let's grab this here. We'll move this over a little. Okay. And we'll open Chrome. New Chrome, and we will shrink it down in size and Yashica Electro 35 images. So this is the camera that I actually have like right in front of me right now. And if I am doing the freehand sketching as I'm currently doing, I would start with either a side view or a front view of that object. For a camera, I think it makes sense to look at it from the front view. And so if we do this and this and this and rotate for this right here, right? This first sketch right here, like, or even this first part of the sketch, I'm looking to see my proportions. Right? How is the height versus the width, right? Height versus width. And does it feel like those proportions are of the camera that I'm looking at. And if I, one of the ways I can give myself a little flexibility there is when I'm drawing this in like marker at first, or like digital marker at first, but even otherwise, I can say give myself the height and give myself a line, two lines for the width, and I have lots of choices, right? Is this the width? Is this the width? Actually, sorry, just do that right here on the bottom, right? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Right? Is A, B, or C, right? Which length feels correct for width to height ratio, right? Granted that I've already established, right, my height. So which of these am I going to use for my width? And looking at this right here, A is too short, C is too long. I think B is correct. Right, so by having multiple options, we can choose that. Other ways that I give myself those multiple options is by simply putting little marks. Again, so like in these, I actually drew the lines, but I might just put a little dot on my lines to mark it and then visually imagine those vertical lines that I just sketched for A, B, and C as a way to judge. Right, so those are all these things that I'm kind of doing in my head. Or I'm doing a little bit in my head, I'm doing a little bit on paper. So let's actually just continue with this. Right? Just like I said. And now again, is it this, 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 this? Is it this? I think it is this one right here in the middle. Nope. I thought it was, but now that once I draw it, I think I'm wrong. So I think it's actually this one on the edge. I think that's better to match the proportion. Again, it's just in marker, so I can always change it. Now I'm looking for some other things about the proportion here. And again, we see me make this little mark right there for where there is the viewfinder at the top. Something right about here. And there's another little, like the flash, I believe, right above that. And now I'm searching for the lens. The lens seems to be sort of centered right between these two marks. And that feels about right because the lens is somewhat off center, right? We can see that this line is longer than this line. And the lens is a little low on the camera, like very close to the bottom right here, very close to this right here. So now I can just draw that. And I think this is the simplification of this camera. Maybe the lens feels just a little bigger. I'll go larger in there. And I think that is the correct proportions of this. So now I can switch over to pen and commit all of this from marker to pen. I mean, it's just so much easier to start off in 2D and slowly add details that way than it is to start directly into 3D. And I'm not going to add too many more details. So you can see the camera on the side here, and there are more details than what I put there, but I'm not going to add all of them. Maybe if I'm going to add a few, I see some little cluster of buttons and knobs up here, as well as one over here, but I could choose to add those or not when I draw this thing in 3D. So from that 2D sketch, I'm not going to do a side view. I'll do a side view in a moment, but I normally, for myself, would not do a side view. I would actually, from there, jump into 3D, and I'm going to do this and this, right? So very much like what I did in 2D, of giving myself my height and imagining, how far back into space does this thing go. I think it is that second line right there. And now I'm comparing the height to the depth. How deep is this camera? How deep is it compared to the height and the depth? And I think maybe it's right about there. Maybe a little too narrow. So we'll actually just do a mark right next to it to make it a little bit wider. And now I can start sketching my box in 3D. It turns out here, that's off right there. And where is this? Right there. That top piece. This one going back into perspective. This way, as I'm doing this, this box feels a little short, so it seems like I keep making the error of making this a little short. And I can extend this up, out, and out. And that feels just a little bit better. Now, because I'm in perspective, finding the exact middle, marking X on here. And I'm actually doing that because the lens is not on center. So I'll do it right there for the lens. So the minor axis for that lens is something like this, I think. And I want this point and this point. So that feels correct for that. I think it extends all the way out here for that lens. So something like that. That and that. And now so I did a little slight different ordering of operations there. So now I'm doing these up top. And that's why I kept it so simple in this 2D sketch, because we can't add a bunch of the details uh, like the logo or some other marks on there. But it gets really difficult when you're first moving into 3D. So when I am, again, first sketching something, whether that's a sketch in observation, or that's a sketch in observation, or a sketch of something I am designing, keeping it simple at first, focusing on the larger forms and shapes is more useful. There's plenty of space on the page or other pages to continue adding details on there. So there's no rush to have to do all of them right away. But as you build up your sketch and your confidence with what it is you're sketching, you can add those additional details. Also, if you make a mistake, it gives you a little space to correct those mistakes, especially if you are sketching in 3D like here. And I feel like that ellipse is just a little bit off for that camera. It's ever so slightly sagging just a little bit down. That is unfortunate. I probably could have just had it open up a bit more. I think that would help to feel better. Again, because it's digital, we can just take this whole thing, copy it, paste it, move it over, and wow, I think it's a little bit easier to see how that lens is off. But we'll leave that right there, and we can start adding a few more details on this. if we want to. That was a mechanical, digital error. Whoa, something's wrong with this pen right now. So adding these details on there, adding more lens details in there. Adding lens details on the outside there. Adding little things like this. But you have to understand the perspective, be able to add all of those in there accurately. And having that larger form makes that a lot. I often use the word easier. I'm looking for a different word than easy because I know it's not easy, but um, it gives you a process. It gives you a process to go through. Whoa, where did that error come from? That line, I don't like that one. That was a digital mistake. That line that was on the lens. But that was I was undoing all that stuff. Just to find where that was and remove it. What else we got on this camera? There is kind of rounded corners here, which is hard to do once you already add the ink in there. We can shade it just a little bit. And even for this, we will go to marker first and get in. Marker's a little big. Detail there. There, draw the minor axes. So when I put them in pen, you can do it somewhat correctly. So Corey, if you're still here, is that what you were asking about? Because if you're thinking about like a more, what's the word I'm looking for? A more rigid orthographic, with the top view, side view, etc., then I think this is not what you're asking for. But I rarely do that intense of a rigid construction uh, by hand. If I'm going to do the orthographics where I am going to get those top view, side views, etc., I would be doing. I take it to the computer because it's a lot of work. Okay, so good to see that that's what you're asking for. And it's worth another thing I want to call out right now while I have this here is, I mean, we just saw me spend, right, difference between the two of these, something like, let's call it 7 minutes. Maybe it was more, maybe it was less, right? So this was plus 7 minutes, but I think this one was only like 4 minutes. Rough guesses, rough guesses. We can always go look at the timestamps later on and see if it's correct. Um, but this is the problem with a lot of tutorials sometimes is that they take their time and they show you how to do, right? Draw a box, draw a cylinder, draw two more cylinders on the top. And then they say step 4, right? Add all this detail, right? So step 1, step 2, step 3. And the problem I found with that is like step 1 and step 2 and step 3, like they look like this. And then step 4 looks like this, right? But hey, do all of that at once. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's too big of a jump. Um, so I guess I gotta go make a tutorial that breaks step 4 down into like the multiple steps it is to get there. So make the step 4 tutorial. All right. So that was going over again orthographic construction and how I approach it, and why. For most objects, it's going to be a side view. Uh, that's going to give you the proportion you're looking for. For a camera, like in this instance, I think right it was that front view, because we can go back and draw the side view of the camera, and it gives us much less interesting information, right? It gives us how deep this thing is. It tells us how deep the lens is, but right for a camera like this, we lose so much more about what the character is, right? If you were to look at just this silhouette alone, or what is that thing? It could be so many things. So in this instance, for a camera, the side view is not the way to go. But if you have an object, and most of the objects that are human made in the world are symmetrical, are that when you look at them from the side view, like a vehicle, right, it's going to tell you a lot about what that vehicle is. And I'm trying to figure out what is this vehicle. I guess this is like a crossover SUV, maybe. Right? It's definitely not a race car. Right? So, and the reason is that the side view works again is because I'm looking at it from front view is useful, but it is right. It's symmetrical across that center line, and right that center line is the side view. So you can mirror across that center line later on. So for most objects, like I said, you're more likely to find the side view to be useful. I'd pick an object, a camera, where the front view is more useful. There's some products where the top view could possibly be more useful. It varies, but most products, the majority, will be the side view. All right, that it brings us to about 55 minutes of me talking here and doing this. So maybe come back and finish this later on. Um, I'll come back and finish this. Let's just close out by finishing this camera right here. Now that I'm looking at like the details of a camera here. Oof, that perspective is still kind of off. Why is it off? Because my vanishing point is going this way. So I'm gonna cheat that here and undo it and redo it Okay, that feels better. Yeah, so much better. That small little difference, right? The minor axis is splitting right there. Oh, this is the one where I want to do a few more details in the sketch, right? To have that example be slightly, well, be great, right? Be better than the previous example that was on the page here. But I kind of have that looser mindset of the last page or that I was doing on here. Yeah. So, right, just some examples of different objects and what makes a good sketch versus a great sketch uh, from an industrial design standpoint for communication. There's definitely a place for some freehand stuff without construction, and I do that a lot myself from time to time, especially for personal work. But when I need to understand what an object looks like and what the form is, drawing through is great. It helps me take the object into 3D and build it there, and that's my recommendation. So have a good weekend, everybody, and I hope you learned something today.